Hey guys, this is my final project for Python. I created a Python GUI application called R G Be Perplexed, and what it does is it takes some input from a user and encodes that into RGB values. So let's dive into it. This app is going to feature input text controls, so this is where the user enters their text in that they're going to encode, the color input controls, and I ran into some problems that I didn't realize during my planning stages. If uh, the user selects a starting point of 255, 255, 255 for each of the values, there's no room for the cipher to grow. So unfortunately, I had to make a compromise, and that compromise kind of led to a second level of encryption, honestly, where R is randomized, at least to start out with for the initial value, and then the users enter in G and B. And I have this set to a very specific range for the random int. And I'll go into why here in a bit. I also have other safeguards in place in case there's any characters that are out of scope for the program. But you're still able to get pretty much everything that every character that is on a common laptop or that we use in the States. Going to have a submit button, and the event handler function for this is where all of my coding is going to be outside of my GUI. I have an error label that displays error messages at different points while during the program lifecycle. It also displays the success message if everything goes according to plan. I have a cipher key label, and this is going to populate the key for the encoded text. It will also format the title of the text output program or text output file, where the key will be in the title, and I'll show you that later. And this is just my manual, but basically just talking about what they're going to do. Enter in text, enter in G and B values, or you can leave them blank. The default values are 0. Hit submit. It'll pop up if there's any errors. If it's successful, it'll give you the key. The file is going to be in the same folder as the program itself. And here's just some tips. Talk about why R is randomized, and uh, it's important. This is the limitation I was talking about, having Unicode value, decimal Unicode values lower than 255. For what we're usually used to, it only goes up to like 180 or something like that. I'll pull that up here in just a second, just give you a taste of what we're looking at. But yeah, it'll let you know if you enter in something higher. And by limiting this, I was able to increase the range on the random int for R. So that's why I chose to do that. Because before you could enter in pretty much every, well, not, well, yeah, every single Unicode value there was, but I feel like it's more important to have a range on R, so I chose to do that. But yeah, so let's get started, and here's some Unicode, decimal Unicode values just to show you. So we're all the way up here in range 518 or so, and we've got all these weird characters that we have nothing to do with. So once we get up to more in range, which is our range goes to here, 255, we get all the way up to here, where we start seeing some familiar characters. And here's where the lowercase alphabet ends. But yeah, so lowercase a would be 97. I think, okay, yeah, space is 32 and the exclamation point 33. And so that it should work as expected. So let's get in here. All right, so as you can see, I've got my GUI built in, everything on the same file, just to make it easier for me. But I'm not going to go into depth about the GUI, but all I'm just creating the window, setting up my error label there, and then below the function itself, I've got my title label, input label and text, color label, and then here's my color inputs. Now, as you can see here, I've got a random int from 0 to 250. Now, I know the range on our RGB is 255 per tuple, but I chose to do 250 so that there's still 5 million extra spaces that the Unicode could take up if we wanted to. But this is where I'm leaving it out for now. But yeah, so text hints and default values would be 0 for G and B. I've got my instructions. I've got a blank key label here, and this is where the cipher is going to pop in and tell you, like, this was your starting point. This is what you need to use. And my submit button. So we'll go up here, and here we're getting our input string. Here we are getting our RG and B values. Since R was random, it already came in as an int, but I converted it to a string because I needed to use it for string concatenation farther on down. It was the other way around for G and B because what we're getting is text already from those inputs. So what I did was I converted the strings to ints instead of converting from int to string up here, but I ended up with the same thing either way. I also formatted, this is R format, G format, B format, because my R value, once everything's squished together, R value is going to represent millions, and then G is thousands, and then B is just going to be hundreds. Uh, and B, it was redundant to have it in here, which is why I put it in here, but it was easier for me to follow, and I like repetition, so that's, uh, yeah, and it's not like it's taking up a whole lot of memory or anything either. Here I'm formatting the RGB value together, which some of this is redundant. I could take it out and redo it if I wanted to, but I'm at a point where the code works and I like it, so I'm going to leave it in. But yeah, just specifying 3, 3, and 3 for the formatting. Okay, so right here is where we get started. What this does, this char array, is it lists out all of the characters in the input string, and that includes spaces, exclamation points, apostrophes, and so on. Uh, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take that char array and we're going to convert each of those characters into decimal Unicode. So I've got my blank Unicode array here. I've got a for loop that runs through all the chars in char array, and then ORD right here converts it to decimal Unicode for each of those chars. And then I go from there. I take my Unicode array, and then I initialize my new RGB array, and I begin formatting all of the values in Unicode. So right here is where I'm checking is the decimal Unicode value greater than 255. So I'm putting a self-imposed limit on what can be entered. If it is too big, it'll get you an error. Adding starting points for the individual Unicode integers and then formatting. I had to do it this way. I tried doing it another way, a shorter way, and it just gave me more trouble, and it wasn't formatting and doing the math like I wanted it to. So basically, all I'm doing here is I'm saying, and I could simplify this now that I've got some other stuff figured out, but like I said earlier, the code works. There's no sense in trying to mess it up and make it worse. So I'm taking value of the Unicode array, and then I'm adding the B format, which again, there is no B format because it's just in the hundreds. I don't have to multiply this by 1,000 or 1,000,000 like I do G and R. So if new B ends up being greater than 255 after you add in the starting point for B and the value of the Unicode character, and if it falls between the second step, as I'm going to call it, or in the G range is what this is really, then I'm going to add 745 because 745 plus 255 gives you 1,000. So you'd be starting off fresh at 001 if your G was set to 0. And then the rest of this is if your G is not set to 0. So with that being said, we're going to keep cycling through this until we find out it's either our new B is in the step it needs to be, or if there's an error, if it's the Unicode is too high, which you'll never run into this for decimal Unicode. I think that's higher than any range, but I have it in there anyways. Then we get down to setting up the G value. So new G is going to be new B plus G format. Remember, G format is the starting point G value the user entered times 1,000. So 1,000 plus whatever new B is. If new G is greater than the upper G limit, then we're going to move forward to the R range, which is just adding 745,000. If it is greater than the R range, it'll give us this error. And you're more likely to run into that if you have something too high. But I've got enough redundancy and built-in stuff that I don't think this will happen. Okay, so adding the R value. All we're doing here is adding new G plus our R format, which our R is the random int between 0 and 250. So between 0 and 250, whatever that is, times 1 million plus new G. If it's greater than the upper bound of R, which is the upper bound of the RGB values in total, then it'll give us this error message. And because I built in some safeguards, I don't expect that to happen. I expect at most you'll see a value of 251 for max R. But yeah, or 250, yeah, 251. So then we go down here and we add new R, which really at this point, new R holds our entire integer for the new RGB values. So I'm just calling it something else here, and then I'm appending it to my new RGB array. Now I'm setting up my final array, which is what's going to be formatted and populated in the text. So we've got 9 digits total that we're wanting in here. I am adding my starting parentheses, the first 3 numbers of my final array value, a comma, space, the next 3 numbers between 3 and 6, and then comma, space, and then the last 3 numbers, and then in a close apostrophe and pipe delineator. If I wanted to decode this, or build a program to decode this, I could use it to split out everything in between the pipe delineators and all that, or it just makes it easier if you're decoding it by hand. So that's why that's in there. Next, now that we've got everything, and once we get this, we format or we append it into our final array, and so on. So right now, our final array is ordered in the exact order that the text string was put in. So that's how you'll be able to decode it, not just get nonsense. Okay, so yeah, creating the text file with the final array values. I am setting it up so the file name is formatted RGBE underscore or perplexed underscore the R value and then the G value and then the B value dot text. And then yeah, saving it. And again, that'll save right here in the same folder as our program. So down here, if everything goes according to plan, the error label is going to say file created successfully. It's going to be green. Key label is going to show the cipher, which is just going to be the input values that the user entered. And what I wanted to do originally was have it to where the foreground color was the color combination that the users entered. But I could not effectively do it. And it was just too much of a hassle. So I gave up on it and just took it off the cutting board. But yeah, that's all there is in my submit function. And you get down here into my GUI. So let's go ahead and run this. So I'm gonna start off with, and you see my starting value is randomized at 248. We'll start off with a space character, and I think that was 32 was the value for that. Then we'll do lowercase a, and we're going to leave G and B blank. So yeah, close out of that. We'll open it up. 24800 was our starting stuff. So right here, my first character was a space, 32, and then lowercase a, 97. So we know it's working there. But let's go ahead and run it again anyways. All right, so now we're just going to hit a bunch of things. We'll put in some characters for good measure. All right, and we'll start off with starting value of our max floor for each of those. Okay, and again, I don't think I said it earlier, but file created successfully. Cipher key for what is this? Did I open the wrong one? Yes, I did. Okay. So right through here, we've got everything we need. Because my starting value was 255 for those, it went ahead and added and did some math there. That's why that's 0, 1, but just adds to the complexity. But yeah, so we ended up moving up here as well. But so if we see anything that's above 255 in any of those sets of numbers, we know there's an error. But as it is now, I'm not seeing any. So we are golden. That's all there is. Thank you.